Welcome back to the Strength Culture Podcast, number one in the hearts, number one in the charts. So once again, El Capitano is away. Mr. Jamie Smith is in Europe, so your boy D-Banger has taken over. And we're also missing Mr. Buzz. So given that we're down two boy there's, we had to get an extra large guest. We have today with us Mr. Jaxon GUERIN. Jaxon, thanks for coming down.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be on the podcast with you lads.
Did you just hit a session? How'd your session go, man?
It was incredible, to be honest. I really liked the kit, even though I'm unfortunately pretty much competing in like a beauty pageant. It was actually really fun. So doing a lot of like push stuff. Yeah, like I said, I haven't really ever trained down this way much, and the facilities are really good. Like seeing what you guys have really developed over the past few years, and also how you give me like a brief, like before the podcast, like a brief history of how you guys came up. It's great to see. So, you know, at the end of the day, like just making something that is in your dream and what you want to envision, and you bring that to life. Like, it's just incredible. So,
thanks, bro. We appreciate it. And definitely, obviously, got to give shout out to Jamie Smith, who's not here because he's our leader, and this is his gym and it's his vision.
He's the boss. He's the boss man.
No, can't say boss.
But it has evolved, the gym. Like, I don't know if you ever came to the old one.
No,
it was a lot more dingy in the sense like it was a very warehouse factory looking thing, and now obviously down there it looks like a showroom now.
Yeah, it's like a very boutique like setup, yes. And I think like that's really nice, you know, because it attracts like both demographics of, you know, like people who still want to train hardcore with all the kit and the culture, and then on top of that as well, you know, it attracts people who want that nice sort of boutique look. Like, yeah. I think what you guys have hit off is like really nice. You know,
I got a client call it. One of my online clients came down to see the physio the other day and called it bougie, and I was like,
bougie.
I'll take that. So you say you got a comp coming up?
Yeah. So pretty much, I'm looking at competing soon, but actually right now, I'm having pretty much like a good break for the next like 1 to 2 months. So basically, long story short, I was meant to compete on Sunday in the IFBB comps, and what happened in August was I was on the heavy squat press and I was doing like 12 plates a side. Warm-ups are great. Then I feel like 3 huge pops in my adductor, and I'm just like, oh shit. And I'm like, oh no. And I literally got off straight away and I was in just excruciating pain. Could barely walk. So that night, like, I was just mentally spiraling. And especially when you're in a bodybuilding comp in like a very large caloric deficit, like your brain chemistry like just changes like so much. Like no matter how lean you are or how good you actually look compared to the vast majority of the population, you just feel so bad about yourself consistently. And this is the one thing is that like a lot of bodybuilders don't talk about, and I think it should be talked about a lot more like frequently, just because, you know, like also mental health too. But essentially though, long story short, I tore grade 2 my adductor. And then 2 weeks later, I actually had like a grade 1 tear in my pec. So I'm like, well, I think, competing is just going to be off the cards right now. And, you know,
so with that, I imagine it took the second injury for you to really pull the pins. After the first one, were you still like, all right, let's see what we can do. Let's try and make something work here.
Yeah. And that was the thing. So after that first injury, you know, I realized that, you know, there's been bodybuilders that have gone through way worse crap than me. And, you know, I shouldn't really sort of complain because, you know, I just found that with the situation I had, I could still do some things, even though I was in a lot of pain for like a good week. But then that subsided. I'm like, okay, well, at least I can walk. At least I can leg extension, leg curl. It's like, 8 weeks into the comp? Then I'm on the bench press, and then I feel like this, like a less major pop in my pec, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And that was when I really thought to myself, like, I think it's my body telling me like it's had enough. You know, and there's a certain point I think as an athlete, you have to be self-aware to the point where you're not being, I guess, obnoxious with how you are on the pursuit towards a goal, and sort of realize, okay, you know what, like my body's trying to tell me something, I've got to listen to it. And that's the one thing that I think a lot of athletes, in my opinion, should be more focused on right now, is understanding how to listen to their body more too. Yeah.
Sure, man. So in terms of like managing being in a large caloric deficit, pushing the hard training, obviously trying to, you know, as much as possible, trying to avoid injury or minimize the risk of that. Is there some things you try and keep in mind with your approach or your training? Because I'm sure it must be quite difficult to need to push these heavy loads whilst being on very little food comparatively to what you're usually eating. Is there some things you kind of include in your approach to do your best to try and avoid some of these things or try and manage some of these things?
Well, I think everyone's approach is definitely different, and the way I approached this comp was a lot different compared to the first one. So pretty much I had 2 previous unsuccessful attempts at competing, because the first one I had a huge electrolyte imbalance, and I'd like not enough potassium in my body because I dropped so much body fat and so much weight in such a quick period of time. And then secondly, what happened was I had the COVID lockdown. So I was like, just going to wait till next year until this all sort of rolls over. But then this approach was a little bit different. I had to make sure that, my stress was low physically, mentally, in work life too. Relationships were maintained effectively, because it's very easy to just not want to hang out with people because you're tired or you're hungry, and you got to prep your meals, you're working. And then now also opening up a merge with the boys, Cal and Jules, it's us 3 there. It was another big stressor that I didn't realize, and also realizing, I had a lot of things going on in my life, and that still are, and that were causing this stress to affect me. And I didn't realize. The one thing I just wasn't really good at was being self-aware over like the past few months and this year. So that's why I think, my approach wasn't the best this time, but essentially I thought I was doing everything I could, but I really wasn't. And this is again, just going back to the premise of, you have to listen to your body and also listen to yourself mentally, and just be aware and be like, okay, what am I in this situation right now? Okay, I'm content with my life and what I'm doing. But if I feel bad, what's making me feel bad, and how can I get myself out of that place? So, and that's why I think, every single contest bodybuilding prep you try to do, you learn new things about yourself too. But that's why with the current approach that I had, it was a little bit all over the place, to be honest. I was getting very unorganized, I was getting lazy, I was getting a little bit selfish, and I didn't want to do that, because I think there's a point where, of course, you have to be selfish those last few weeks and that last month of the bodybuilding comp, but it was too far out. It was 4 months before the show, and I realized I'm really lean already. I'm well, no wonder why. I've gotten there too early, and now I've got to maintain this for ages, and it just stressed me out. So,
are you doing your own coaching, or you got a coach?
Yeah. So right now, I'm doing my own coaching for 6 weeks, and then I'll definitely get back on to bodybuilding prep with a coach. I think it's good to have a break as well sometimes from just everything, even powerlifting. I remember when I was with Aries Strength, Matt Prokak, after I did the GPC comp. Straight after that, I pretty much just had some time off, and he was he recommended that I should rest, and I'm done. So I think it's good as well to sometimes do your own thing for a few months, and especially when you're not being serious, I'm just chilling out right now. So
burnout. That's one of the things we've been hammering on lately, and because I know I'm doing nationals in December, and I am feeling a touch on the burnout side, because for the last 5 years I've powerlifted, and I just need a bit of a break, and that get away from the powerlifting specific training. But if you do that, you're probably going to last longer anyway by just cycling through and having periods of less specific training, or taking a break, or even dropping down to maybe from 4 or 5 sessions down to 3 sessions for a month. It's not going to. People think your gains are going to be out the window if you drop one session for 3 or 4 weeks. It's not that easy.
It's really cool to see a guy at your level to have that mindset, because there's plenty of people we run into not at that advanced of a level yet, thinking that, taking a month off, or not even a month off, but just maybe pulling things back or changing approaches slightly is going to be the end of the world, or that, why would I even bother training then? But you're doing it, and there's obviously something to it, and there's plenty of successful people who also do that, regardless of the sport. It's not always go, pedal to the metal type approach.
Yeah, exactly. I think, there's my barber told me this when he was cutting my hair. It's just gave me some really philosophical quote. He said something along the words of, you can't give someone your battery percentage if you can't give that back to yourself.
Yes.
And I think that in this day and age, it's great to always be there for people, and to always ensure you've got their back. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's hard, because when you're always doing a lot of things for people in life, we tend to not get caught up with how we're feeling, and that's when you can really quickly spiral out and burn yourself out, because you're working so hard, or you're doing a lot of things, you're trying to maintain relationships, and it does add up, because stress doesn't just come from training. Stress comes from, your mental state, your social life, your relationships, your work life. So many of these facets add up. as a collective to how you are as a person. And I think at the end of the day as well, like this is why like mental conditioning is a really good one too, but then also understanding when to have a break. You know, that's why like I have a sports psychologist, and he's a genius. Like I think he used to work at Hawthorn or Richmond. And, you know, essentially he gave me some like different ways to how to combat like stress and all this kind of stuff. And it's a lot more simple than it seems. And I think though, like, especially a lot of people who are like high-end sports athletes don't actually see sports psychs, which is fine. But at the same time too, it's good to understand it can help you become more self-aware. You can learn a lot of great lessons from, you know, that practitioner. And also as well, like, you know, you look at, well, like Cristiano Ronaldo, like he brought Jordan Peterson over to his house, you know, and you see like that he had a full-on like consult with him for like 90 minutes. And you see, you know, how like the best soccer player of all time, arguably, needs advice from a psychologist. Like, and this is the thing as an athlete, it's all about like mastering all the foundations and all the basics, you know? So that's how I see it. You know, it might be different to a lot of people, and I think it is, but at the end of the day, like I think we all can somewhat like agree on the foundations of most things, you know? So yeah.
What was some of the, you mentioned there quickly, the stress management strategies that the sports psych gave you? Is there anything that you'd be happy to share with us, some of the
100%.
strategies he gave? Because I feel like people would, obviously a lot of people listening to this probably compete in some sport or powerlifting or bodybuilding, so they probably find it useful. What were some of the strategies he gave you to help?
Yeah, so pretty much when I saw him a couple of weeks ago, he said, well, like, what's your goal? And I'm like, okay, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And he just like listed 7 things. He's like, you have 7 main stresses in your life you're trying to do at once. Like, let's just plan this effectively. I'm like, okay, seems like pretty straightforward, but all right. And then he said, all right, what's the goal? To alleviate stress, to reduce anxiety, you know? And essentially through that, we had the thinking and the doing module. So the thinking module essentially focuses on, okay, you have, you know, your 4 circles. Your main circle, that first one, is essentially you. That's you. Like, you are in that first circle. That second circle essentially is the closest people in your life that you listen to wholeheartedly. And then that third circle essentially is people you're mates with, like you're friends with, and you sort of know. Then that one outside of that is, again, acquaintances. And then that one outside, again, of that is even just like people you don't know of, like maybe social media or other things like that. So pretty much that was a great one to sort of realize, is that, you know, like you have a group of people that you trust. You know, it's like, for example, even in the business, like I trust Julian and Cal with my life, and they're some of my best mates I've ever had. So that's why as well, like establishing those mental thinking modules essentially, and to know who, you know, you trust with your life and you can get great advice from too, helps a lot, because you can get advice from some Joe Schmo and you can take it really seriously and you'd be like, oh shit, like, you know. So imagine if you're doing, let's say, powerlifting meet, and then you're doing like your max of like, let's say pull 300 kilos, and then they're like, oh, so like, are you gonna like start training for a comp soon or something? Like, if you take that literally, you're gonna be like, oh shit, like that sucks. So
yeah, for sure.
And that's the thing. So, but then when it comes to like the doing module, like he had 2 different types of methods. One that was essentially like, what was it? Like rough planning, and then specific planning. So, you know, that like rough outline of the planning, essentially each month, you have the big ticket things like each month, all the way up until like, you know, end of next year or whenever, you know, you have these things. So you can essentially tackle all of these main stresses or things that cause you anxiety. You can tackle them one by one. And then from there, with the, I guess, specific planning, you know, that's like daily and weekly stuff, you know, ticking the small boxes that make up those foundational things. Like, for example, this month, like my whole plan is to, you know, essentially heal up and rehab from these injuries, and to make sure that I'm in good nick with my body and make sure I'm healthy. And that was the final thing. And essentially that's why, like, then each week it's like, okay, every day do my rehab, every single week focus on, you know, strengthening my body, this and that. So yeah, so I think everyone has a different approach, but like he's genius. Like, And I think it was the greatest thing I've ever done.
It's awesome to hear that like the approach is a very like kind of strategy planning based approach. I think myself and maybe a lot of guys might hear about seeing a psychologist and your initial thought is like, oh, we're just gonna like talk about our feelings. And for some people, obviously that's great, but maybe for everyone, like at least at first glance, that's not something you necessarily feel like is going to be useful or something you really want to invest time into. But to hear that like he's helping you to like plan things out and tackle these things in a kind of step-by-step way in the same way that we might attack, you know, training or business. That's cool to hear that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, like I said, it's just a great thing to do, in my opinion, you know, especially I've never been like an anxious person. And, you know, being 23, like I have far less experience than a lot of other people on this planet. And I'll continue to do so, you know, like I find myself always a student of the game, never a master of it.
Yep.
But that's why as well, like, you know, like Julian and Cal, they're like 10 years older than me. I ask them like so many things every day. I'm like, hey, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? And, you know, they give me their advice on things. And even like my parents, man, like I ask my parents heaps of advice and on things. And that's why as well, like I just really like hanging around people who can handle like highly stressful situations and seeing how they operate. I just like sponge it up. So, and that's why as well, I think if you just like pick and like absorb from different people how they handle things and how their outlook on life is, it really does help you develop to be, I guess, to be the best version of yourself, or to, I guess, be on that right path. Yeah. So
that's awesome, man. I definitely find that like I see clients of ours that are busier, have more going on, have more like challenges for them to nail the nutrition and nail their training. And I see the things that they do and the strategies they go through to get there. And it's almost like, wow, I could take some of that on, because they've got way more challenges to get things done and they're still getting done what I'm getting done. It's like, fuck, like take your hat off to them, you know? Like,
yeah, I completely agree with that, man. Like, I think, yeah, just at the end of the day, like when it comes to like learning from every single person you come across, I think it's a great thing, because you know, there was a lot of things I wasn't good at when I was younger. Like, I wasn't even good at being social. Like, before the age of like 18, I was just like this loner. And I was just essentially like, didn't know how to have a conversation with people. And then, you know, when I started dating my girlfriend, she's an incredibly social butterfly. And she was like telling me, like, just ask people about their day, like how, like, and see how much more they'll be willing to open up to you. Because I always wanted to create deeper relationships with people and my friends. And then all of a sudden, it just like it changed my life. You know, essentially like caring, like you're actually caring about what, like how their day is, like how they're feeling, or like what they're doing. You know, and I think that, you know, like creating solid relationships at the end of the day, it's even just like, it's like, for example, dating a girlfriend, or like you have a wife. Like, you know, it takes two to tango. You know, so yeah, that's I highly agree with it.
100%. I'd like to spend a bit of time discussing Emerge Gym, what's going on there, some of the things you guys are achieving. But before that, I want us to circle back a bit. We like to ask a lot of our guests how you got into training, and probably more specifically, some of the early influence, like some of the people you initially look up to that kind of guided your approach to training, like some people you wanted to be like, that kind of thing. So when did you start training?
Oh, man. Got to rewind the brain on the bit on this. I pretty much started training around bodybuilding specificity around 2016, 2015. So pretty much
17, 16,
I was about 16, 17 there. And pretty much prior to that, I came out of like the whole TAC football, like state system. You know, I wanted to play AFL, you know, because I just love playing footy. And then I pretty much just like lost my passion for it.
Yep.
And then from there, I'm like, might as well try and play like NFL maybe, like do the punter stuff. And, you know, I really love like Rob Gronkowski. Like he was like just a freak in nature. And I'm like, I want to be like that big. Like he's a big boy and he's still athletic as.
Yeah.
So I started training at my home gym. Had a really good setup there, believe it or not. I had like dumbbells up to like 50 kilos, cable racks, like squat racks, leg press, hack squat. And from there, I just started eating like a horse. And I just ate. And I remember this was about November, December 2015. And I went from a 100 kilo deadlift to like a 220 kilo deadlift in like 3 months. Fuck. And then I remember my first like 100 kilo bench. Like my mate was spotting me. I was like, yes, like it was good. So, and then from there, like about 9 months later, I did my first ever like natural bodybuilding competition, and you know, that was really fun. I won the classes in that and got qualified for nationals. I'm like, oh, I'll just focus on year 12. But yeah, so pretty much about 16, 17. And then from there, it's just like, after I picked up that magazine of Arnold, I just had that love for training ever since. And I just love it. And I'll train to the day I die.
That's awesome, man.
I love it.
That's awesome. So initially it was maybe trying to emulate some of these NFL players, but then the further you got into lifting, it was like, nah, I want to be Arnold.
Definitely. And I think as well, after I also went to Doherty's gym for the first time, it just like ticked something in my brain. I'm like, I just want to be a bodybuilder. Like this looks so good.
Doherty's Brunswick?
Yes, good old Brunswick.
So that's the headquarters, isn't it?
Yeah, and
OG.
that's where my coach Scott Goebel is as well. So pretty much I was with Scott for like a good 2 years. And pretty much like through there, I was training there consistently when I was doing my preps and like off season and all that kind of stuff. So, and then pretty much like when I was there, I just saw the pictures, like all the bodybuilders, and I'm just like, far out. Like this is the dream. Like, you know, just it wasn't even really focused on like clout or anything. It was just the premise of like, you know what, like I can't buy my body. I can't rent it. You just got to work for it. And when I realized that I could apply that effort and learn those principles into other aspects of my life, like with the gym, like with Emerge, like with coaching people, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it really just sprouted into something that was bigger than myself. And I really, really found, I guess, direction with my life, you know, because a lot of people, especially young guys, like even like 23 or in their 20s or even in their 30s or when they're teenagers, like just, they feel lost. They don't know what they want. And it's because like we lack purpose. When we lack purpose, we feel like we lack direction. So yeah, that's why I think just having that purpose with anything gives you that drive to do it and to do it with everything you got.
We used to have when Jamie and I first started at Strength Culture back in the day, so the old facility, 2016, we used to have a saying that the gym was a metaphor for life. So how you would respond in the gym you take those same traits into life. So like when shit gets hard and you step up and you're like, fuck, I'm just going to crush this. I'm going to crush this session today. I'm going to get it done. I feel like shit. Like that's typically, if you get a challenge in life, you're probably going to respond in the same way. So you can start to develop those characteristics by training. And just the whole concept of like stressing the body and it gets stronger. It's such a cool concept to me. It's always been something that I just love about the gym. And that's probably what drew me to training as well. Similar age, 16 or so. It's just unbelievable.
I think those parallels is definitely similar to like playing sport when you're younger. Like you're on a team, it's bigger than you. You've got to put in effort for your team. You've got to work together. Like you've got to be disciplined. All those types of skills that obviously, you know, a lot of people can probably draw on those as some early learning lessons for them to take into things later in their life. I think we glazed over the fact you did your first bodybuilding show. How old were you?
I was just turned 17 at the time. Yeah,
High school.
Still in high school.
So we're doing meal preps at lunchtime.
Take us through that because I find it fascinating. What was was this year 12 or year 11?
This is year 11.
Year 11. What was your routine like? And also, I want to know what the other kids thought.
Okay, so first of all, I did not tell one living soul about competing until like the week of like peak week, and I remember like my whole layout of like training after when pretty much like I got to the home gym, I started training out of this like fighting gym in Nuttawading, really, really good gym, Hammers Gym. And I remember when I was training there, when I was prepping for that comp, I remember at the time, like I just ate like a horse and I went from like 74 kilos to like 103 kilos in like 4 months. That is crazy. Terrible.
What were you eating?
I ate, okay, so this is pretty disgusting, but essentially, remember those, like I was having about 6 scoops of mass gainer a day, and 1 scoop of that was about 700 calories. So already alone, I was having like 2,500 to 3,000 calories of just crap.
Mass gainer
crap. And essentially though, when I was doing that, I was also eating 4 packs of mee goreng noodles before training, having breakfast and still lunch at school. And then I would have dinner that my mum made me. And essentially I calculate it roughly. I was eating some days upwards to over 1,000 grams carbs. And
it's funny because like now is what we know, someone young like yourself, so novel to training, you just wouldn't need to eat that much. No. Like to see the gains that you wanted to see at that age. You're like a sponge. You're gonna soak that shit up. Yeah. And you just eat like a fucking. You gotta eat because I used to get Maccas after I trained. That was my idea.
Good.
Were you just eating all the time? Like were you ever not eating at that point?
I was always eating, and like I was just drinking protein shakes, and I'd put it with like the full cream milk as well. The full like recipe for like high cholesterol. You know, like essentially I remember, man, just feeling like just death. Like when I was 100.1 0.3 kilos. I got this picture of me like taking a picture with my feet on the scales, like 101.3 or something, or 100.3. So, and it was absolutely terrible. And then essentially after I got like this coach, he's like, yeah, we're gonna have to tighten some things up. And I'm like, yeah, definitely. So
into that comp, did you have that first comp? Did you have a coach?
Yeah, I did. So essentially, I went from 100.3, I think, or 101 kilos down to, I think it was like 85 kilos. So within that time frame, like I definitely didn't put on like 10 kilos of lean mass. I think at least 6 to 7 maybe, just from my training. I was just lifting so heavy consistently and just trying to learn as much as I could. But yeah, I lost like almost 20 kilos nearly, and it was like a 9-week prep. And I remember that peak week, or like the 2 weeks out, was like just death. Yeah. I remember because I wasn't in year 12. I didn't have like access to the common room. I couldn't have a microwave. So I'm eating, like I'm going to like have a bathroom break. I'm like, miss, can I please go like to the bathroom? She's like, yeah, go. And I quickly just run to my locker, just like scoff the meal, and then go back to like school.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. And it was all cold that peak week, man. Like I remember I was having this like just fish and asparagus for like 6 meals, and I'm like, and I just remember eating this cold barramundi, and it was really like tasting death. And I'm like, yeah, I should probably like find a microwave for this. And yeah, it was a really different experience, but I really did like the challenge. It was really hard, but I found that it really did help with evolving my mental fortitude, like as a person and also as like an athlete. And then essentially, that peak week, I just told like one mate. He's like, oh yeah, like, so are you starting the diet this week? I'm like, oh, okay. I've been dieting for like 9 weeks. I'm like, yeah, just shut me down a bit. So then essentially then I put up like a little Instagram post, because it was in Coffs Harbour at the time. And I remember just coming back to school the next week, like all tanned. And there's like girls looking at me like, what
the fuck?
What are you doing like in your free time? Like,
funny story. One of our former interns and former clients, Alex Shepherd, he just competed in ICN on Saturday. Actually won. So shout out Alex. But he coaches one of our gym members, and he asked me if he can come in on Sunday just to help him out, because his client, his coach, is competing in a week. I said, yeah, that's fine. And then obviously came in fully tanned. And Jamie's parents, Loris and Robert, they come and clean the gym on Sunday. So apparently Robert, he's like this 65-year-old guy, doesn't know what the fuck's going on with bodybuilding. Apparently we was just looking Alex up and down like, oh, like he's like didn't know what to make of him. Like, and Laura's probably like, what's going on here with this fake tan? Like,
you literally look like an Oompa Loompa. What school did you go to?
I went to Blackburn High, so really local school. And I was actually going to go to like some private school, but then I'm like, nah, I want to go to like this school, which is close and stuff. And it was actually the best thing I ever did, because when I was doing also the football at the time, my older brother was doing really well at Box Hill. He went to Box Hill Senior. And he essentially was like a year or two below Ben Simmons.
Yep.
And he was doing the football. And then essentially when I was doing the footy, I got asked to go there, and I actually said no. And then through that, I really enjoyed my high school life. It was just a great experience, and I made a lot of like quality friends. And, you know, also like there was one teacher that I had, and his name was Jeff Feasy, and he believed in me from day one, because I got fairly bullied a lot when I was younger and stuff, and because I did ballet for 6 years, so I was always like accused of like, you know, oh, you know, you're like such a pussy, and like you're such a girl and all that, and you know, all that typical like stuff where people would just like make fun of me for being also that short, awkward kid who was a little bit fat and all that stuff. So essentially though, this teacher believed in me from day one and helped instill a lot of values into me as a person. And then, you know, like unfortunately I found out he passed away last year from a heart attack. So it really did like impact me, and it hurt me a lot because, you know, because that teacher, like he just made my life better.
Yeah.
And essentially, like I find also in the schooling system here, like if a lot of teachers were like him, you know, like students would actually prosper to be just like the best version of themselves. You know, because a lot of people just like, oh, I just don't want to go to school. It sucks. You know, I've seen teachers say to people, oh, you know, you're never going to be anything, you know, and then, you know, you see these students doing incredibly well themselves, which is, I think I don't like bad reinforcement at all, but that's a thing. So I find like in the schooling system, I had a really, really enjoyable school life in high school. Primary school, questionable. But I think though, I was very happy with how I brought up. Like at the end of the day, like I'm just like I had a very average like upbringing. Like I had parents are well off, and, you know, I had a very, very good life, but though at the same time, I think I would just want to impact people and show them that you can do something regardless of where you come from, you know, because I think at the end of the day too, like a lot of those stories that, you know, get told of people, you know, like trying to make an impact, don't come from always the worst situations, but also come from the most standard because, you know, you're expected to just do well, go to university, get a good job, and, you know, give back to society, which I think is a great thing to do as well. But I found that like with how I wanted my direction in my life after school was like, I just want to like just help people. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to find a way. And then essentially after meeting Cal and Jules a few years ago and, you know, essentially hitting it off with them, you know, like we're incredibly on brand with Emerge, you know. So
yeah, probably can
good segue
well into the gym.
If you're slamming your training, you're probably after some subs. Your boys have sorted you out. We've partnered with Elite Supplements. You can use the code CULTURE10, CULTURE10 across their entire site. The great thing about Elite Subs is you're not limited to one brand. They've got a variety of brands on offer. Proteins, pre-workouts, carb powders, creatines, you name it, they've got it. So use code CULTURE10 and let us know what you get.
I did a session there, might have been a couple of months ago. Fucking crazy gym, man. Like, and I mentioned before, like it's easy for you to come on the podcast and like looks like I'm just trying to pump your tires, but hand to heart, crazy gym. Like really solid gym. Like we go to a lot of gyms, doing comps and whatever it is, and you know we've seen a lot of gyms, but it's rare that you walk into a gym where you're like, holy shit, like this just fucking blew my mind. Like it was fucking awesome setup you guys have down there. If you guys haven't gone, definitely check it out. Emerge Gym in Box Hill. Fucking sick facility. Really cool. Yeah, but yeah, so you guys have been open for about a year now. Is that how long
not
it's
even
been?
that?
Not
We've
even
been
a year,
open
right.
since like April, May.
Yeah, I was going to say it was around when Pro Raw was on because I remember
yeah.
hearing about this new gym.
Yeah, so pretty much like it was really hard to like keep under wraps. Like I'm a massive big mouth. Like I can't shut up. I have like conversation with a brick wall, you know. So I think, yeah, it's like when we had this whole idea coming up, I'm like, you know, like I remember I was working at a sup shop at Doncaster, Westfield, and I'd have people coming by. They're like, oh, you know, so where you train? I'm like, oh, I'm just like training and doing what I want right now at different gyms. And I'm like, oh, you know, like, where are you from? They're like, oh, from Doncaster. I'm like, check out this gym soon, you know, like, you know. So pretty much, yeah, I had to keep it under wraps for a good few months and, you know, as well with the boys. But yeah, like I wouldn't really ever be anywhere close to this position without like Cal and Jules in my corner. You know, they're older than me. They're my mentors. Like they're also my best friends.
Yep. How did you guys meet? How did that trio come about?
Man, so pretty much like, this is another crazy story. I'll be very quick with it, but essentially,
we've got time.
2019, you know, I go to church for, you know, like the Christmas carols around December. And essentially through my girlfriend's friend is friends with Julian and she brought him. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like, he's a big boy. Like he's in shape, you know. And I was like doing full powerlifting at the time, and you know, like doing the GPC comps. And I was about like 5 weeks out from GPC Summer Classic in 2020.
Yep.
And yeah, I was just like to this guy. I'm like, hey, you going, man? He's like, yeah, nice to meet you. I'm Julian. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Started talking about powerlifting and how it just evolved into, oh yeah, I'm doing that meet as well. And I'm like, oh, nice. Like, you know, do you want to like what's your training schedule? He's like, oh yeah, every Sunday I have bench. I'm like, done. Let's like bench every Sunday. So we were benching every Sunday at Pro Raw Gym, and I really love that gym setup. I was there for a while too, and we were training there every Sunday. And then pretty much after that, we, you know, would get pizza and we hit it off. 2 weeks into our date, we had like a little one-on-one date at 095 Pizza. Good place as well. Check out pizza. All of a sudden, he's like, oh yeah, so what are you doing after the comp? I'm like, oh, I probably want to go to America. I just want to train there and just, you know, I've had plans for 2 years. Just I want to go there and just train at Gold, see some people I know and catch up with some old, you know, like acquaintances. He's like, oh, what dates? I'm like, oh, from this date to this date. He's like, yeah, like I can come if you want. And I'm like, done. After 2 weeks of meeting Julian, we go to America a month later for like 3 weeks. And it was mayhem. It was so fun. And from there, we just hit it off. And then it's funny because he used to talk to, well, his current wife, Tara. He was talking to her like the year before and he told me about it. And then it sort of like hit everything off again when we were in America, because my girlfriend, Amelia, right now, she was hanging out with Tara and then they were FaceTiming. And then just from there, it hit off. And then January, they got married. So it's awesome. Just like insane how it just, you know, like, I don't really, it's hard. I sort of do believe in fate, but don't. But then when it comes to like those kind of things, you just can't explain it. It's like right person, right time, you know? Like
it's like fate is a nice narrative to believe in, and like there are certain things that happen in everyone's life. You're like, that's got to be, but yeah, it's also like the odds of things happening. It's like so vast, like can't even comprehend it. But that's such a cool story, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was just insane. I couldn't believe it. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like
So for people who aren't aware, the way you kind of run the gym, maybe you can explain that a little bit. Like it's kind of capped membership. You only open up memberships every time, which I think is a cool concept. You don't just want to like open the doors and flood people in and have like mayhem. Like you want to be a certain amount of people and stuff like that. So maybe you can explain that a little bit.
Yeah, well, so pretty much like with Emerge, like we wanted the setup of like, okay, like we have this space. How can we utilize it as best we can? You know, and how can we make the membership experience like number one? That was like our number one goal, you know, because essentially like before we also started like in lockdown, we, you know, went to Julian's house and we were talking like, how can we do this? And, you know, what's our why? Like, what's the why behind this? Like, why are we making a gym? And it was to improve people's lives.
Yep.
And so through that, we're like, okay, then how do we make the membership experience number one? So through that, we're like, okay, well, I've seen a few gyms in America. They have a capped membership. And the one gym that really like just got that light bulb above my head was Flex Lewis's gym in Texas, you know, the Dragon's Lair. He has that gym now in Las Vegas too for all the public, but essentially you just like train out of there and just like bring his mates in and just like select people. But instead of being like selective with people, we wanted to just make sure that we'd have a maximum cap on the members. And through that, like around 400 to 600 members, we're looking at around 500, I think. But essentially though, we'd have intakes by 50 allocations at a time. So it's not like just flooded in with people. And also as well, like when people come in and see the gym, we essentially like show them the facilities, but then we explain our why behind the gym. And we want people that every single person that walks in those doors is on brand. And, you know, we've been so lucky to have every single member there on brand with what Emerge is. So that's why I think with the membership experience, we wanted like a membership cap just to make sure that, you know, like you wouldn't come in at like 5 p.m. and just want to walk out and be like, nah, like I'll come next week because it's just too busy. So, and especially like with how the gym operates, you know, like we're just so grateful to have people that also believed in us and just come to the gym because we started from just like a clean slate, like nothing, you know. So most gyms, you know, they might start off like from a previous gym, all this kind of stuff and have like previous members. But yeah, we just started off with nothing. And then essentially from there, like people just came and said, I just love this culture. You know, one guy who competed on Sunday, his name's John Storatis. He was a freak. He's like shredded did the comp. And last week, like he gave me a message after I just said, oh, you know, how you feeling? How you looking? Like you're keen for the comp. And he just said to me, he's like, I just love this gym. I feel like family here. And it just hit me. Like, I'm just like, I shedded a little bit of a tear and it just made me so happy on what like Jules, Cal and myself could try to just give back to people, you know, and especially having that group of people that you can just trust and, you know, just help people, like helping people and doing what you love. Like for me, that's all that matters. You know, it doesn't matter to me about anything else. It's just like, if we can have these facilities and just bring a smile to people's faces, make their days a little bit better, like we have succeeded. And that's why, you know, we just want to help every single person that comes in that gym, you know? So yeah, that's pretty much like the setup and the layout of like how we want the premises and everything. And, you know, it's cool. We got some more cool stuff coming on the way. And, you know, like also as well, if you're like up to date with like the socials, we'll have everything released on there. And, you know, so yeah, it's really cool. So essentially though, like seeing also how you guys operate here is just awesome. Like seeing, you know, essentially the facilities and like the kind of athletes you have here, you know, it's great to have your own space and to, I guess, just have what you want, like envisioned to life. Yeah. So
that's cool, man. Yeah. I think something we've kind of gone through is like, maybe it's come to the realization that like, not in like a rude way, but like our gym's not for everyone. It's not to say that we don't want you, but it's just not for anyone. Like there's a way we run our gym that's going to attract a certain type of person. That's the type of person who's really going to want to train. And if we can sum that up, it's probably just, do you want to train hard? And are you a nice person? Like that's basically it. Like if you want to train hard, this is the place for you. If you like pushing yourself, if you like being around other people that are pushing yourself, then that's the place for you. But like like we upped the rate of our casuals, and the reason upon moving to this gym, we didn't really do casuals in the old gym, but the reason we did it was because we had it at a certain price, and too many casuals are coming up, and we wanted to make sure that the gym wasn't too busy for our actual members, because as I'm sure you understand, like casuals tend to come at the busiest times, which already is when it's kind of pumping, and some people might get a bit like put off by that, but it's like if no casuals ever rock up. Like, as much as it's, once again, might sound arrogant, like, we don't care. Like, the gym's for our members. Yeah, people are still going to rock up, but we don't want it to be just, like, quote unquote, like, flooded with people, because, at the end of the day, the experience is here for our members.
Exactly.
And obviously that's what it kind of comes back to. Yeah. Awesome, man. We might roll into some Q&A. I'll just pull up some of the questions we've had. So thank you for those who have put some questions in for us. Let's have a look here.
See what they say.
Alrighty.
I've got no idea what the questions are. Usually I have a we've gone through them quickly before without the guests, so I've got an idea. I've got no idea.
Donnie sent it to me. I haven't even opened these yet. Alrighty. So, favorite podcast outside of the fitness industry. It seems like you like some influences outside of it in terms of like some motivation, stuff like that. Yeah.
That's
Joe Rogan experience.
That's because I literally I'm answering these questions as if I was you, and I was like, it's like I don't want to go to Joe Rogan because it's so cliche, but that's literally. It's like Joe Rogan.
It's just so great because like you just hear about people's stories.
Random people.
And it's just like, you know what? It goes all the way from like even like that Alex Jones one. That was so intriguing. Like like a conspiracy theorist essentially like is coming onto the show, and then you've got people who are like incredible musicians, like people in NASA, astronauts, like. It's just like it's so different. That's why, and it's so simple, but it's because you're just focusing on just so many people's stories, and it's just like getting to know what people have done, gone through. It's just incredible.
Some of the people that now I follow from all different sort of walks of life are from Joe Rogan. Like one of the ones that I love to follow and keep up to date with is Steve Reinella, who's a hunter, and he's got his show on Netflix called Meat Eater. And I got him through Joe Rogan. Like there's multiple people, I'm just like, I would never have ever heard of this person if it wasn't for that podcast. And I know Joe Rogan has copped a lot of flack lately, last couple of years and whatever, but I still think he's number one. He's killing the podcast. Like Joe Rogan is living probably the life that we all want to live. Commentates the UFC, goes hunting, has a podcast with all these famous people. Like who wouldn't want to be that?
Fucking oath.
Imagine that.
Alrighty. We kind of touched on this a bit in the foyer, but before the podcast. So differences in powerlifting versus bodybuilding culture. I'm going to jump in here and something
answer the question.
I'm going to give my take first. So I'm sure you've got plenty to say on this, but I know what you're going to say partially, but one thing I think that I'd like to see more in powerlifting, and this is just my like little shtick, is that powerlifting definitely has the kind of the reputation of like, oh, everyone's here to support each other. And that's great. That's awesome about it. But what I sometimes don't like is that when there's higher level competitors and they're both in a position where like, they're there to beat each other. They're both good. They're both pushing some solid numbers. I like it, and this can be a bit like different to the usual powerlifting approach, but I like it when people treat each other as competitors. Like people are like, yeah, like I want him to do his best, but I want to beat him. Like sometimes you'll be like, oh, like I'm going to lift and then I want you to beat me. It's like, no, you don't want him to beat you. Like it's a sport, bro. Yeah. Come on. Like if you're just getting into it or you're doing it for fun, that's fine. But at those high levels, and that's definitely more the case in bodybuilding. Like we've put all this work in. We're here to do our best. Yeah, I want him to bring his best package, but at the end of the day, I'm here to beat him. Like that's what it's about. 100%. So yeah, that's just my little thing about powerlifting.
You got to dehumanize your opponent. That was what Serena Williams used to do. Or she used to do. So she'd like literally like if she saw you in the locker room, it was no like hello, nothing. It was fucking robot. I'm gonna beat you.
All right. After my little jump in, let us know what you think because you've done both. You've competed in bodybuilding and
bodybuilding. Yeah, I completely agree with that statement. I think especially like the difference, I guess with culture and bodybuilding, powerlifting is like powerlifting as a collective. Everyone pushes each other, of course, more consistently. And I think in bodybuilding, like on social media, it's great to see obviously what more bodybuilders getting around each other. Because 10, 20 years ago, it was just like, I want to murder this guy. I want to kill him. I'm like, I still like that approach as well. Like it provides great entertainment. Like even you look at like last year, Nick Walker against that competitor Blessing Awabadu in the New York Pro, I think, or it was like another comp. And essentially, it just creates like great, of course, entertainment. But at the same time too, like off the stage or off the platform, you guys are friends, you know. And this is what I like in powerlifting and bodybuilding is like, you know what, for example, like one of our coaches, Brendan at the gym, was like, you know, like we are both pretty much like the same in terms of strength on deadlift. And like, he was like, I'm going to like get 310. I'm going to beat you. I'm like, in your dreams, bro. Like, you know, but like after the lift, I still support him on the lift. But, you know, it's like on that, when it's time, it's like, I'm here to win.
Yeah.
You know, I'm here to be number one. And after the comp, we can share a drink or something or have some food together.
And the thing is, like, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your competitor to have that mindset, because when both of you are there to do your absolute best, you're both going to get better. Like that, it drives people forward. And that's what it's all about.
It's character development too, you know? Like, I think if you are competing and you don't have like that worthy opponent, it's like, do you really deserve to win? You know? And I find that it's very easy to like compete in a crappy lineup or, you know, not have really that competition that you are actually a little bit worried about, in the sense that you have to give yourself, like, you have to push yourself more than what you think you can do in order to probably beat this person, beat your previous self. But that's how we better ourselves. You know, it's like, at the same time too, when it comes to different aspects as well, I think that in different areas, especially like with Emerge, like, it's different because like we want to be the best versions of ourselves, you know, but when it comes to like being an athlete though, like you're going to have that competition. It's a sport, you know? And I think of course, like, it's debatable. Bodybuilding is more of like a sport. I think it's a subjective sport, but like powerlifting though, it's like on the day, it's like, you know what? I'm going to out total you. I need to win. Like, and I think everyone has different approaches, of course, but yeah, that's why I think, in my opinion, you know, like, you pretty much you hit the nail on the head there. So I agree, you know.
Awesome, man. Awesome. With that, maybe before we get into some more questions, with bodybuilding, is there like a rough time frame in regards to when you'd like to get on the stage again? And with that, would you ever like do a powerlifting comp again? Is that something that you'd ever? Because I imagine if like, say if you were competing in 2 years in bodybuilding, because of that, you know, maybe it's just not worth it, your time. Spending time powerlifting, but maybe it's like, oh, I want to take several years off bodybuilding, then maybe we could slot one in there.
100%. Well, like I said, firstly, definitely I will be doing a powerlifting meet in time, like soon.
Awesome.
I would love to do powerlifting again. Like, I remember I did this like mega bulk last year. I ended up like touch and go benching 215. Nice. I didn't squat at all though, but like, yeah, I got really strong on my bench, and like my last bench at my meet in GPC was like 172.5 or like 20. So it was like 40 kilo jump, and I'm like, nice. So at least like somewhat I've gotten stronger with things. My deadlift right now, I don't really know. I did like a crappy 305 deadlift a few weeks ago, but I'd like to get more. But when it comes to bodybuilding though, like, I guess I'm really trying to keep it under wraps right now.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because I think like with myself, like I demand like so much for myself. Like, but I think that's with a lot of people though. But with me though, like I know I need to bring my absolute all. And there's a point where like I almost want to be like Usain Bolt, where, you know, he's like 10 meters in front of everyone else, you know. And I think it's a bold call, of course, but in the bodybuilding space, like if you give like a little bit of your subpar effort on the day, and if you don't come first, it's like, well, there you go. Like I dropped the ball and I wasn't on every single day. And there, of course, though, consistency is the main factor behind, of course, competing. But yeah, that's a thing. I think it's like when it comes to that kind of that space of like a competitive sport in bodybuilding, like I put a lot of pressure on myself, which is my downfall. But that's why if I just like don't tell anyone when, you know, and then I just come out and compete, it'd be a good thing to do for myself. So.
I think there's a couple of things that we can take from there. One, like, you know what, you want to let your work do the talking rather than, I'm gonna do this comp, I'm gonna do this, which I think is awesome, because it's funny, like in the foyer you asked me like what numbers I want to hit in my comp, and yeah, I can throw some numbers out there, but I'd much rather just go there and do it versus like, oh yeah, I could probably hit this up. Let's do it instead. The other thing I was going to say there was, you might have to edit this out, Donnie. I've just had a bloody.
Keep it glitching there. We hear some creatine.
Yeah, we've had no edits yet. With the comp, that's what I was going to say. So this is, people definitely take this approach to powerlifting when they don't, but it definitely makes sense for bodybuilding. So people think to do a powerlifting comp, they need to be hitting this number, and you know, maybe for some people that's just their mindset, whatever. But like, you can just give it a crack. Whereas bodybuilding, it's not a competitive sport. If you're going to go through X weeks of dieting, all the steps, all that type of shit. Like
Lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It's a
24
lifestyle.
hours.
Like I could. It's not ideal, but I could compete in 4 weeks in powerlifting. I really wanted to. I might do all right, but like with bodybuilding, you don't do that. Like it's a big commitment. So I can understand in that situation why. Like, if you're gonna go on the stage, you want to fucking kill it. You want to go there and be like, oh, I did all right.
Exactly.
For bodybuilding, fair enough. You want to put yourself through something that grueling. And if you don't think you're gonna do amazing, maybe not worth it. Yeah. But on the flip side, with other endeavors like powerlifting stuff, it's like, man, like it's not that hard. Like it's not that extreme. Just give it a crack. But I can definitely see why. It makes sense why you only really want to rock up and put your the best effort you possibly can.
That's the thing. I feel like at the same time as well, you can't put so much pressure on yourself where it's like, oh, I'm never going to compete until I do this, because you're always going to create sort of false expectations about yourself. Like I know a younger kid who's like 20 years old. He deadlifts like 340 and he's not a powerlifter. He's a bodybuilder. He's from Geelong. He's a freak of nature, this kid.
Jeez.
And I'm like, when are you going to do juniors? He's like, oh, I'm going to do it in like a few years. I'm like, if you jumped on stage now and people saw you at 20 years old, they would have their jaw fucking
They'd
dropped.
lose it, yeah.
And that's the thing. But like, I think for some people, their time definitely will happen soon. But at the same time, though, like for me, I have a different like outlook. It's like I just need to just get on the stage as well. It's like with the platform, just do it. It's like I think with a lot of things where like we have that hesitation. It's like, what if you're afraid to fail? But it's like, but what if you didn't even try?
For sure.
So
Sometimes you maybe just got to pull the pin and give it a crack.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It resonates with me because I was watching, I don't know if you guys know who Brené Brown is, but she's got one of the most watched TED Talks of all time on vulnerability. And I was watching her Netflix speech last night, and being vulnerable is going into battle when you don't know what the outcome is.
Wow.
And when you don't have control of the outcome. And we see that a lot especially because we deal with a lot of powerlifters. Oh, I don't want to do a comp until I have these numbers. It's like, well, just get in, do it. You're probably going to learn a whole bunch of shit from it anyway. But who knows, you might actually exceed what you think you might get, but you got to step in and do it. You got to jump in not knowing what the outcome is going to be and just take the leap. And that's one of the biggest things we see early is people just don't want to do it. What are people going to think of me and whatnot? But just step off and do it. And that's why I liked what you said when you're like, I just need to do it.
Yeah.
Just got to do it.
Yeah.
Just got to do it. Doesn't matter what the fucking result is. Just got to do it.
Exactly. And I think, it's like a lot of people as well are afraid of criticism. Like at the end of the day, like who gives a fuck what people think? You know, like respectfully, like only what matters is what you think of yourself and what you demand from yourself. It's different if like your coach probably thinks something as well.
Yeah, I think
coach, but like
people when you spoke about, you spoke about those circles before, like those people in your inner sanctum. Like if Jamie Smith says something to me that probably is going to hit home harder than fucking the keyboard warrior on YouTube comments because I know I've known Jamie for 17 years of my life, or if my girlfriend says something to me or my mum, because they know me. Yeah. So you're going to take that shit a lot. Like if they give you some criticism, but you kind of have to block out all those other people because they don't fucking matter.
Blinders on.
And it's a flip though. If someone who doesn't have a lot of context of your life gives you a compliment, it's almost like, we probably had those situations where like someone will give you a compliment and it's like, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know if I don't know if I need that compliment for you, or if like you don't actually have the context to give me that compliment. So it's like it kind of feels fake. Whereas if someone like for example, Jamie Smith, he's not, we know how he is. Like if Jamie Smith gives you a compliment, you feel it because he's not gonna gas you up and give you a compliment. Anything. So if Jamie Smith gives you a compliment, you're like, fucking oath, I've earned that because I know he's just not gonna throw it out, and he knows it actually is.
We've got a saying, Buzz and I, well, it's more Buzz's saying. I'll quote him while he's in Port Dougie, fucking kicking back. But he says, if everything's amazing, nothing's amazing. So you got to be careful too with like that. Or
if everyone's a king, no one's a king.
That like, toxic positivity that every single thing you do is amazing, because then actually when something is fucking good and you earned it and you did well, it loses its credibility.
I completely agree. Yeah. That's the thing. That's why like when I was doing powerlifting, like with my old powerlifting coach, like if I just like did something really good, like if I did something shit, he would be like, that sucks, that is terrible. And I'm like, oh shit, like that really hurts, but it made me better. And then also when I did something like just a part of the plan, he wouldn't say anything. Like I would do like clean as reps on like a deadlift or a squat, he'd be like, and just walk off and go back to like another client. And then when I did something really good, like when I bounced back after this flu and I went from like from a 230 squat to like 285, like an easy single, he was like, super happy with me. And I felt amazing about it because, you know, of course, again, no one's going to sort of talk shit and no one's going to sort of just, I guess, sugarcoat anything when they say, you know, you're doing well at something, you know, like, because to be honest, like, you know, at the end of the day, you could have probably people say, oh, you know, you're doing so well with the gym, but they could just be just trying to be nice to you.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between having actual criticism, being nice, and actually complimenting your hard work.
And it's not always like coming from a bad place, because if someone just wants to be nice to you, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think the way I take it sometimes is like, it's nice you said that, but it doesn't actually hit me like a proper compliment would, you know? Like,
my pet hate is when people compliment me on my warm-up, because relatively speaking, whatever I'm lifting, you know, I might be working up to a 270 squat. So I do my last warm-up's 250 and someone compliments you and it's like, man, it's a warm-up.
Man, I'll be
It's
warming
like, yeah,
up.
all right, it's a heavy squat, I get that, but it's nothing, I'm not fucking proud of a warm-up
I've been doing this for
squat.
3 years. Like, Donnie will get the fancy camera out on my deadlifts. I'm like, Donnie, put that fucking camera away. If anyone, I don't want anyone to think that I think this is impressive.
It's a warm-up squat, like, yeah, and not to, like, obviously, you know, people being up, but it's like, you kind of, because you're like, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
One of the best compliments I ever got, and I take this, because I know that, again, this type of person won't say this compliment, was JP Cowkey. I remember at the Fitness Expo a few years ago, I pulled this deadlift. I hurt my back in squats. I went out deadlift. Last deadlift, I hit this like 6-second grinder and got it up, locked it out. Wasn't a PR, but I just was happy that I did it because I fucked my back and I was like mad. And I remember he messaged me and goes, "You are a strong motherfucker." Because it was like, not just the fact that you lifted it, but you were fucked and you still went out there and did it, even though it wasn't your best that you've ever done. And it's just like that comment was like, I took that, I was like, because I know he wouldn't just hand out, he's not the type of person just hand out fucking everything's amazing comments. Like, it was like you earned that from him. So I just thought that add that little bit in there from JP.
I agree with
All right, we'll wrap up with one more, a bit of a lighthearted one. It's funny the way this person's phrased it, but I'm going to read it out like it said either way. If you could have a one-night stand with one cheat meal, what would it be?
One cheat meal. One cheat meal. Oh, man.
Can I say something? Because I know, is this being referenced from Jay Cutler? Jay Cutler used to say his best cheat meal was the one he didn't have to eat. Because he was so sick of eating.
I'm not sure if it's about Jay Cutler. Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Put me on the spot here. I tell you, like, there is a lot of good, like, cheat meals I've had in my time. But it's just something like that, like a proper cheat, like, oof. Those burgers from Ivanhoe, those Kanye West burgers or something. You know how they got
the one
like,
that got sued because they
have amazing
college dropout
burgers.
Yeah,
they have
the Kanye West burgers.
The best. Like, there's this burger called like the St. Pablo or something, and it's got this like truffle sauce in it, and it is just off chops. It is incredible.
Crazy.
And the chips, like sweet potato fries, none of those normal chips, sweet potato fries,
the bougie fries.
With that also that same sauce in the burger as a dip. Done.
Getting your vitamin A with the burgers as well.
Love that. I lied. One last thing. Yeah, we have to go through this. You mentioned downstairs in the gym something about a powerlifting comp in Sicily. We can't glaze over that. What the fuck happened there?
Okay, so essentially, I got roped into doing an IPF comp in Sicily when I was on my Europe trip with my girlfriend, because she's Sicilian. So pretty much I was training at the gym. This was mid 2019 when I was doing a meet. Of course, I was meant to do originally the Melbourne Cup before I got sick. The owner of this gym was like, like, vai palestra, like, you train in the gym. I'm like, see, I can barely speak Italian at this point. And then out of nowhere, he's like, you powerlift? I'm like, yeah, nice. And he was like, competition next week, competizione. I'm like, okay. And I ended up realizing that it was like an IPF meet, and I wasn't allowed because I wasn't an Italian resident. So they actually pulled like some strings to get me to do the meet, and they were coming second out of like 60 guys. Like, I'd never pulled on a stiff bar, pulled 290 or 285 or something, and then benched like 160, but it had to have my feet like heels down because GPC gave you heels up. So I'm like completely relearned how to deadlift and how to squat within an hour. And then I eventually just won every single class I had. And I got like 4 gold medals, and like I remember just like partying in like the Villetta, like the main town square where my girlfriend lives, just with these 4 medals, just like drinking, and it was really fun. It was just unexpected things like that just they hold like a great memory in your heart.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's
it's great.
awesome.
that's mad.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming down again, bro. Really appreciate it. Before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to plug or anyone you'd like to mention before we kind of wrap up?
Well, no, like I said, thank you so much, guys, for giving me the opportunity to, just like talk about cool stuff on here and everything about life. And also shout out to the misso, because, always have to shout out the missus. Love you, Emmy. Also, Jeremy and Hayden for the gym. I told them I would just give them a shout out somewhere. And then also Cal and Jules. Yeah, and like I said, if you guys are ever in the area, like Box Hill-ish, Blackburn area, more than happy to for you guys to come and check out Emerge. And also as well, if you guys are in Moorabbin area, please check out Melbourne Strength Culture, because the vibes are very nice here. Love facilities. I love them dumbbells as well.
Thanks,
so like I said, thanks for having me on here. I love it.
No stress. Thanks for coming down, man. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good. See you later.
Join the Discord.